For more on the protest, let's cross over now to LA and CBS News correspondent Jonathan Vigliotti. Jonathan, good morning to you. You got more troops headed your way at the moment, but overall demonstrations have been mostly peaceful. What have you seen?
Yeah, that's correct, Errol. Yesterday, protests were largely peaceful compared to what we saw unfold on Sunday. Yesterday's demonstrations, they began in the morning with a rally that was held in a park here in downtown LA. Our team was there filming. There were about 1,000+ protesters gathered. They then splintered off, marching through the streets, focusing a lot on federal buildings, where at one point they did come face to face with the National Guard that has been tasked with protecting those buildings. It wasn't until the evening hours where we started to see things pick up. You had peaceful protesters then merge with provocateurs, people who are using the crowds as a way of trying to incite chaos and throwing objects, as we witnessed at LAPD, who were stationed throughout the city. The LAPD then returning fire with rubber bullets to disperse the crowd. They successfully pinched those protesters out of downtown LA. This morning, it remains relatively calm. A lot of the entrances here to this city have been blocked off. You mentioned the troops. 4,000 National Guards, 700 military members will also be brought in. That is more personnel than we have seen so far of protesters here on the streets. Again, officials here urging protesters to remain calm, to keep their demonstrations peaceful as we now enter day 5 of protests, Errol.
Yeah, and Jonathan, it remains to be seen if those mobilized National Guard troops will be activated and visible, or if they'll be on standby, as many were earlier. What do we know about the protesters who have been arrested?
Yeah, we know that one was a local union leader. He had a confrontation with police and was arrested. I mentioned that rally that happened yesterday. It was held in his name. As far as the others that have been taken into custody, we don't know their identities, but based on what we have seen here on the ground, the people that have been taken into custody, a lot of them resembling those provocateurs that we talked about just earlier, with backpacks and things inside, taken into custody, Errol.
All right, Jonathan Vigliotti with the latest for us out of LA. John, thank you. California Attorney General Bob Bonta says President Trump did not have the authority to call in the National Guard. He discussed the state's lawsuit against the administration yesterday on The Takeout with Major Garrett.
The authority that the president cites to only allows for the deployment of the National Guard by the president when there's an invasion by a foreign nation, which there's not, when there's a rebellion to overturn the leadership of the United States of America, which there is not, or when the regular forces of the federal government cannot execute the laws, which is also not present. The law also requires that the order to the National Guard be issued through the governor, meaning the governor needs to consent to calling in the National Guard, which he has not only not done, but he has strenuously objected to them being, the National Guard being called in.
CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe is following all the latest on this for us and joins us from the White House. Good morning to you, Ed. So you look at all of this and you wonder, what is President Trump's overall goal here, and how is he reacting to the state's lawsuit?
Well, as for Governor Newsom's lawsuit, the White House basically dismisses it, believing they have the legal authority to do this, and they'll see the governor in court. Politically, and from the president's viewpoint, look, immigration, law and order have been his signature issues ever since he began running 10 years ago this month for president. And so what you're seeing is sort of an evolution and a continuation of that focus of his through all these years. Concern he's had since he was president 4 or 5 years ago about how big cities respond to violent protests, especially in the summers. There had been talk, for example, 5 years ago this summer, when the George Floyd-related protests were breaking out, about possibly sending in troops to do what they're doing now in Los Angeles. And he was stopped by his then defense secretary, his chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who said, "We can't do that, sir." In this case, all these years later, having campaigned on a promise of sending in federal authorities if mayors and governors didn't step in quickly in the last 2 years, he's now doing it, and he has a defense secretary willing to do it. He has other aides here at the White House willing to execute on those orders. A border czar, of course, who's out there making changes to ICE enforcement. And we're going to see the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth later this morning on Capitol Hill facing questions about the budget, but undoubtedly facing questions about what's going on in Los Angeles.
And what do you make of the president saying he thinks Governor Newsom should be arrested? I mean, that's not campaign rhetoric that he's used to. This is a statement from a sitting president. What do you make of that?
It is, but it was in response to something that the governor had said. He was asked in an interview about what Tom Homan, the border czar, had suggested, that anyone who impeded immigration operations could be arrested. The governor said in response, well, Tom, come get me and arrest me. So then yesterday the president was asked, well, what do you think? Should Tom Homan do that? And the president said, sure. He was later asked, under what authority would the governor be arrested? And he merely said, well, it's because he's not doing a good job. So that's clearly not a very serious or substantive answer. But the rhetoric suggests that this is a fight the president wants and relishes, and frankly, that the governor has been inviting as well in his own public comments. The president now has a blue state governor who may one day run for president himself, facing off with a president who knows that immigration is his best issue. It's a political fight the White House welcomes.
Yeah, important points all around. Ed O'Keefe, thank you.